All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. So today, we are going to explain to you how you can spend $25 and understand exactly how your bag is working, or more importantly for you guys, not working. All right, guys, so in today's session, what we're going to do is explain how an hour of rented bay time, which typically costs about $25 in the US, maybe around $35, $40 here in Canada, 15 to 20 pounds in the UK, something in around that. And in that hour's worth of time, you can map out the performance of every club in your bag, certainly all 13 clubs that you hit full shots with. And what we've created for you guys is a template that shows you exactly how fast you swing each club and exactly what the spin loft that you create with each club is. And I know that sounds quite technical. Don't mentally switch off just because I mentioned a technical term in spin loft. But what that spin loft is, it kind of give you a bit of a little bit of a crude explanation. It's not quite as simple as this, but it's almost as simple. If we have a driver and we deliver, call it 15 degrees of loft, and we have a 0 attack angle, right? 15 degrees of delivered loft, 0 attack angle. The difference between those two angles is obviously 15 degrees. Now, if we go to a 7-iron and we hit 5 degrees down on the 7-iron and we deliver 25 degrees of delivered loft, the difference between the -5 and the 25 is obviously 30. So it's the difference between the direction of the golf club relative to the ground, that's what we call angle of attack, and the direction of the loft presented on the club itself. That's what we call dynamic loft. So it's the difference in those two that creates energy, friction, ball speed, and spin. And that's basically what we want you guys to understand. Those are really the key factors, because we've got energy going into the golf ball and we've got energy going into or being produced through our swing into the club. So we've got club head speed, dynamic loft, and angle of attack, basically. Those are the key factors that we're going to be looking at. So I'm going to run through my whole bag. I'm going to do this test with you guys. I'm going to explain to you based on where my sort of current setup is, where my gaps are. And you guys are going to have gaps undoubtedly in your bag. Hopefully you don't, but I'm sure most of you do. I'm sure I will. My bag is really well set up right now. I've got it where I'm the most comfortable I'm maybe ever been with my golf clubs. And I'm probably going to learn some things today, where two clubs that I maybe swing around the same speed, maybe there's a bit of a change in delivery that makes me deliver, you know, more of a downward strike with more loft, so that angle of that spin loft gets a little wider, all that type of stuff. So bear with us, watch the session. We will be giving you guys access to a link to download the template that we're going to use today ourselves. You guys, that'll be a downloadable, printable link that you can then create your own chart. And from that, you'll see exactly where any of the problems may be occurring within your own bag. Okay, so 59-degree wedge. I know this goes about 90 yards roughly. So I'm going to set the yardages up for approximately where I would expect each club to go. Okay, good. So we've got 49-degree wedge, 120. Pitch and wedge, 135-ish. Okay, 9-iron. About 148. All right, 8 iron, I think, was what did we say, 160? Oh. Went. We're going to hit one better than that. All right, 196. Better. All right, guys, big test. Every club in the bag being hit there. We've got our compare page. We're going to run between that and the table. We've got our own chart here of the differences. We've worked out the spin loft differences. That's not something you get in the Foresight data. We hope that's coming from them in an update down the line. But if we look at a 60-degree wedge or 59-degree wedge, as mine is, 90 yards is how far I expected to hit it. 91 is how far it went. 107 on the 54. So those are all going in about increments. I look at my wedges, they go in about 15-yard increments. 3 yards for every degree of loft of difference. 59, 54, 49, 54. So I'm looking for about 3 yards per degree of loft. That's what somebody at mass speed should get. The average golfer at the average speed should get about 2.5 yards for every degree of loft. That's why historically we've always looked at yardages being between irons 10 yards apart, because typically irons in a set are 4 degrees apart. 2.5 yards for every degree of loft, okay? So as we run through that, 59-degree spin loft was at 56. Okay, so we should start to see that spin loft come down. And as the jaws of that spin loft narrow, that is what makes the ball go further along with the club head speed that we swing the golf club at. So as we look at that, we've got some pretty good gaps. Maybe the 54 and the 60 was a little bit wide, but 16 yards, I'm looking for 15. I'm not that good to be that precise. 14 yards between 54 and 49. Bit of a stretch on the pitch and wedge, 138. A little bit more than it's about what I've been seeing it. Then we see a little bit of a shrinkage in the gapping. So we see a decent amount of ball speed increase, 109, but we actually see the spin stay about the same. So that's probably my delivery. If we go over to table, let's look at dynamic loft between pitch and wedge and 9-iron. They were separated nicely, 36.5 and 32.3. Interesting. Off camera, I said to the boys, it's amazing for me when I go out of my wedges and into an iron, how much less predictable I am. Feel like I'm very predictable with my wedges now, and it becomes more difficult to be as predictable. So we've got a little bit of an issue between that pitch and wedge and 9-iron. On the chart here, the pitch and wedge club head speed was 87, and the 9-iron club head speed was 87.4. So the biggest issue there for me was actually the amount of spin loft difference between those two was fine, 4.5 degrees of loft. I just didn't swing the club quite fast enough. That's okay. That's human error in these things. As long as we've got an explanation, I know that there's nothing wrong with those clubs. I just didn't swing that much quicker. 87 with the wedge, 87.4 with the 9-iron. That's all that was wrong there. That wasn't a club thing. That was a user error issue. And then as we get to 8-iron, the gapping gets a bit more appropriate again up at 161. All right, let's bring up 7 through to probably 2 wood. Okay, 7-iron carry distance, 170, absolutely fine. Spin on that's fine, 6,000. 6-iron. Now, guys, I will say this, I'll qualify this. I wasn't swinging my best today. I was a little bit shallower, and if we go to club data 1 second, I know I'm not swinging it that well. When the strikes are moving kind of from the middle into the heel, and also my angle of attack is getting shallower and shallower and shallower as the club gets longer. Now, that should happen to a degree, but I certainly should not be hitting up on the 5 wood. That's not somewhere I've been recently. So that was user error again, pilot error today. All right, back to ball. So gapping, it does start stretching out here a lot. There was between the 8-iron and 7-iron, there was 2.2 degrees of loft. Between the 7 and 6, there was 5.5. And then between the 6-iron and the 5-iron, there was 2.1. So the amount of delivered loft is really changing quite a lot there, which is not ideal. The increments in which the club head speed is increasing is fine. I'm happy with that. It's going in about 2 mile-an-hour increments. That's what I expect to happen with the irons. And I'm starting to get some answers as to why there might be some really funky gapping, and also why I might be seeing some certain things, like some knuckly flights, because that angle of attack back to that club delivery was getting so shallow, so I'm going to be producing a lot less spin. But in terms of the gapping, it looks okay, right? Maybe a little bit big between 7 and 6. Don't want 16 yards in between there, but you can see it's pretty progressive as we go from 200, 220, 238, 252. And if we bring up driver ultimately, we start to see that one out at 278, right? The incremental ball speed increases, dancing around a little bit today. I would say 5 to 6 miles an hour is what they should be in terms of ball speed. So I'm pretty happy with what this gapping looks like. And for me, it gives me an idea, probably more so today, tells me a little bit about where my swing is at if I've got issues rather than where the club's at. I know my clubs are pretty set. I know they're pretty good. And in all honesty, if you go back to that table and show the whole thing there, Case, if we look at all of that gapping and all the even more intricate details, as we get into peak heights, as we get into angle of descent, right? Things like 4-iron, 5-iron, 47.8 and 47.1, that's really, really good stuff. All right, guys, so you guys now have a template. You now have a table that you'll be able to put your 13 clubs that you hit full shots with into. Something that gives you some idea as to why certain clubs are working really, really nicely and where some gaps might be occurring. And when you look at things like club head speeds, examples like, for me, that my 9-iron and pitch and wedge, I basically swung them about the same speed. Now, that's where the smallest gap is in the irons. There's only a 1/4 inch between your 9-iron and pitch and wedge. So there shouldn't be that big of a speed gap between there, but should be a little bit more, certainly than 0.4 of a mile an hour. That's why those two were a little bit too close. But you guys will go through your own test. You'll see your own spin loft. You'll see your own club head speed, and you'll see your own carry distances. And that's what I want you guys to put into this template to show yourself where the gaps might be occurring and where the opportunities might be to build a more rounded and more complementary set, so all of the clubs that are in your bag are working for what you need them to do. Okay, let us know in the comments below, guys. We'd love to hear your thoughts on, if you've watched this video, please go away, do the test, do your bay rental, or if you're lucky enough to have a quad or a TrackMan at home, amazing. But if you can do the test and come back and tell us where the gaps were for you and help other people understand what they could really benefit from, I think that would be massive to the community and it would really help everyone out. All right, guys, stay tuned for more. We'll see you again soon.